Thank you very much for affording me your time. You're such a busy man, and yet you managed to make time for Business Trends with Mumtaz Essa. Welcome.
No, thanks. It's great to be on your show, Mumtaz, and I hope what we discussed today and with our interactions helps to inspire your viewers.
Thank you. Mr. Reddy, you are the founder of many businesses in the ICT, in the property, in the healthcare sectors. Tell me, and you're also the recipient of more than 50 international and regional awards. You started off with 500 rands and a bakkie, and you've grown your business to a multi-million rand business. Can we start from there?
Oh, of course. You know, when I look back at life, and you know, I've been blessed in many ways, and one of my blessings was that my parents taught me some great values in life, and especially that values about integrity and about community upliftment. And from a very young boy, I used to get involved in community projects because my father was involved in it. And an organization that played a great role in my life was the Boy Scouts organizations, which I will talk about later on. But having, you know, we grew up in Greenwood Park, a suburb in Durban, and I'm the youngest of 9 children. And when you have 9 children, there's a lot of competition. And my dad was a school teacher. And age 16, I was very involved in the Boy Scouts. It's something that I love. And it taught me a lot of things about leadership. And I was selected to represent South Africa at the Boy Scouts World Jamboree. And I was so excited about the selecting. And plus that, they asked me to lead the group to Japan. And when I went home to tell my parents about this exciting news, they were excited. But the problem was that we couldn't afford it. And, you know, my dad was a school teacher earning about 200 rands a month at that time. So the community came to my aid. You know, they had cake sales and garage sales, and they raised the princely sum of 1,700 rands. You know, it was a long time ago, and it enabled me to go to Japan. And when I was in Japan, I was selected to represent the Boy Scouts at the international forum that they launched. And that meeting, at that time, I had the opportunity of meeting astronaut Neil Armstrong. I became the first person in Africa to meet him.
Really?
And
the first person to meet Neil Armstrong?
The first person to meet. I was 69, he went onto the moon, and in 71 I met him. And when I met him, I didn't know what to say, but I just went and shook his hands, and I said, "Sir, can you tell me the secret of his success?" And he told me about his life story, how from a young boy, he wanted to go to the moon, and there was no astronaut program, and how he went on and got his academic studies, and he overcame some health issues, and, you know, the rest is well known, where he became the first man on the moon. But his parting words to me, "Young man, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. Perseverance prevails when all else fails, and never ever give up in life." And it was words that stuck in with me. You know, I went back to South Africa, and as my life evolved, and I worked for an electrical company. And one Christmas holidays, you know, I brought my staff from Pietermaritzburg to join the Durban staff to a year in Braai. And after a few drinks, I went to visit my black colleagues, and I noticed they were having inferior drinks in the warehouse and meat. And I invited some of them to come and join the rest of us with the white staff. And I took a whole lot of them there and introduced them to everyone, gave them some good meats and good whiskey, and no doubt Monday I was called in and fired and said I'd violated all the laws in South Africa. Blacks are not supposed to meet. But I actually told the manager of the company, then I said, one day apartheid will be gone, I'll have an electrical company bigger than yours. And I had not even 2 cents in my pocket. You know, I just married that year. And it was a bit of a struggle to get a job, because word had spread out that, you know, I'm a troublemaker, and I couldn't get a job in the electrical industry. I was forced to start my own business. And the first job I was able to get was some harbour hideaway across the Durban harbour, having very little experience in in business, and this is one of the big problems, that, you know, I was an outstanding electrician. I was really good at what I did, but I didn't understand business. And I went on to my first job, not understanding business, having no signed contracts, and we worked night and day with about 6 people I took from the staff. And it was going to be a great occasion because that job was for 56,000 and I was going to make a 20,000 profit. To tell you about that time, at 5,000 rand, you could buy a new C-Class Mercedes at that time. So it was a lot of money. It was the money that year I got married, and I thought, oh, we're going to go for a honeymoon and get a new ring for my wife. And I went to collect the check those days, and there was a notice on the door saying, company in liquidation, contact our attorneys. And I didn't quite understand what it meant at that time. And I went to see a lawyer friend of mine, and he said, you're in trouble. You know, if this company's got no assets, you're not going to get paid. And my life really dropped, because to do the first job, I borrowed a bakkie from my sister, I borrowed 500 rand from my brother, and that's how I got to start the business. And I was almost bankrupt the first time. And that evening, when I lay down in bed, the words of astronaut Neil Armstrong came back to me. Never ever give up. Perseverance, you know, you must, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. And it was my dream to become a successful electrical contractor. That inspired me. And the next day I went to meet a lot of people that I owed money, and there was very little sympathy. I had no assets at all. They threatened to sell anything. But what I started doing was working very hard. I started working 18 hours a day on all kind of electrical work. And within 9 months, I paid off all the debts. But the lesson that I learned was, and we still do it up to today, and this is what everyone should do, when you're in trouble and when you owe people money, go and talk to them.
Yes.
Be honest with them. People like the honesty, and they will be sympathetic. And that's what we did. And so the business just started thriving, but we're still small. One of the problems is that as much as I'm experienced at major, big contracts, big work, we're not getting big work. And we used to tender, we were still not successful. And I realized the problem was with the name, because I started off life as Reddy's Electrical. And
Reddy's Electrical.
Yeah, after my surname, R-E-D-D-Y. And when we, you know, when our tenders went in, and obviously whoever was there saw the name, and our bid was thrown into the bin. And that's when I changed the name after Thomas Edison to Edison Power, named after the inventor of the light bulb. And then I used to get called to ask to speak to Mr. Edison. And I used to actually tell them Mr. Edison is not in kind of help. And I actually masqueraded in the apartheid days at the white business owned by Mr. Edison. And I used to go to meetings and tell them, and they wanted to know where Mr. Edison, I would say he was busy. And I continued that way. And when it was found that it was not a white-owned business, we were persecuted. They tried to bankrupt us. It was very, very difficult. And our jobs became a source of great interest to especially the public works department and the inspectors, where they wanted us to fail. And I used to quote the words of Martin Luther King, who said that even if you are a street sweeper, you must sweep the streets so clean, like the way Beethoven played music or Michelangelo painted, and everyone going past must say you're the best street sweeper in the world. And that's what we did. We became the best. We became so good they couldn't criticize our work. And you know, the business grew, and then the new South Africa came on. From 1990, the business grew, and things started to change. The electrical business grew into a massive business, and I think by 1994, 95, we became the biggest in the country, and then it just grew as the major projects came in. And then in between, you know, I'm someone that likes to, I get bored very easy. And that's when I ventured, you know, I used to love going to casinos, anything. If I had spare money, I'd go to the casinos. Not big money, but I enjoyed it, because when I went to a casino, no matter what problems I had in life, it disappeared. And that's made me attractive. And only later on in life I realized why. And I got into the casino business, and I remember when I used to drive with my friends to the Wild Coast, and I should tell them one day I'm going to own a casino. And they laughed at me, and they said, what do you know about casinos? But came 1997 when the new bids came in, and I ended up winning several licenses. I built 4 casinos in this country, largely in KwaZulu-Natal, and it's a great business. And yet I knew nothing about casinos except playing. And one of the unique things about casinos, which attracted me to it, is that when people come to a casino, they feel good, they feel happy. They don't know why they feel good and happy. But the reality in the human mind, if I ask you to think about any one thing, about a glass of water, our mind is trained only to think about one thought at a time. And so what happens in a casino, when people are playing and they're waiting for the roulette ball to fall or the card or the slot machines, they are so focused, you forget about your worries. And that is why people feel good in casinos, and those that have alcohol also have a good few drinks. They feel excited. And unfortunately, that creates problem gamblers also. Because whenever you have the slightest problem, you go to a casino and you feel good. And if you have lots of problems, you keep coming back. And but it's a great business, and it's some business like Saaya is our, a great casino, the one that I'm still very involved in. I chair that, and it was great. And then, I evolved. Even at one stage, there was a World AIDS Conference in Durban. And I told my team, we've got to get involved. And they said, but we're not in that business. I said, we're going to get involved in that business. And we found a company in Portland, Oregon, that sold the oral AIDS testing device. And at that time, in 98, 99, the pandemic was absolutely extreme in South Africa and the whole of Africa. And we found a company, a big company, a listed company called Autoquick Technologies, and we managed to convince them against all the big pharmaceutical companies, that they should give us the distribution rights. And we got the distribution rights for the Autoquick. It was a device where you rubbed it on your gums and you put in a solution, and 5 minutes later it told you whether you're HIV positive or not. And it was a first in Africa. We were very successful. From nothing, we started that business. We ended up employing 200 people and selling that business several years ago. Once I was at the airport in London, and I love talking to people. And it's important sometimes to reach out to people, because when you're traveling alone, and there was a gentleman sitting right next to me, having a cup of coffee, and I was sitting, and the flights were delayed. And I started talking to him, and he happened to be the governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia. And he showed me the banknote, the new polymer banknote that's plastic-based. And I looked at it and I said, wow, what a nice banknote, And I told him, I'm from South Africa. And I said, we'd like to market this in Africa. And he said, oh, that's a good idea. And then I actually went to Australia about 3 weeks later, went and met them, and signed up the rights for some distribution of the notes in Africa, and we were successful. And the polymer banknotes were amazing. It's unlike the normal 20 Rand note, which is most used here, lasts for about 6 months. Polymer can last up to 6 years. It's indestructible. You cannot even tear it, and it lasts long. It cannot even be counterfeited. So it's quite that's one of the business. From nothing, we started with that business. And, we even, the South African Post Office was an absolute mess. And they advertised for postal services. And everyone looked at it and said, how do you manage? And I remembered at one stage, again, talking to someone at an airport, and I had his card, and he was from New Zealand Post, a company called Transcend International, which was their private arm. And they manage post offices around the world. I made contact with them, and I said, South Africa is advertising for the postal. And they flew down, and we came out here, and we put our bid. And the whole world put bids, US Post, British Post, and we won this bid. And we managed the South African Post Office for 5 years. We took it from a 300 million loss to a profit. We delivered 1.2 million post boxes. We corporatized post office. We left that as an amazing institution, and unfortunately it all collapsed after that. We got into that business. It is, and in between, while all these were going, we still continued with the electrical business, which was our focal point. And I loved shopping centers, going to shopping centers, and I wanted to own a shopping center. And I had a casino in Newcastle, which had a big land, and I told my team, I said, we are going to build a big shopping center. And I've never done a shopping center my whole life. And we put together a team, And we built a 45,000 square meter shopping center, first shopping center with 45, massive shopping center, very successful.
This in Newcastle?
In Newcastle.
Yeah.
I had a casino in Newcastle, it was right next door to that. And you know, it proved to be very successful, and it was so successful, and I said, oh, I've got to build more shopping centers. I built one in Quadiguza, in Stanger, we're doing, and then the biggest development ever. I mean, I wasn't major in property. Our main businesses are in the power business, and you know, we're involved in the IT field, which I'll talk about, and a whole host of other businesses. The property business was an absolutely amazing business, and I'm a risk taker. And I decided I was going to do the biggest mixed-use development in South Africa. There's 250,000 bulk square meter, which is bigger than the Mall of Africa. And no private individual has ever done that. And I bought this land with a colleague in Umhlanga Rocks, what you call the Oceans now. And it was a very difficult project. Firstly, when we advertised to change it to, you know, we want to build a hotel there and a mall and residential. There were 410 objectors. We overcame all the objectors. Then on the land, there was a post office building. We removed that, a clubhouse, and we had to remove about 240,000 cubic meters of soil out of there. There's 24,000 trucks load of soil, relocate the taxi. It was very difficult. It took about 4 years to perfect the site. We got the site going. We started the building, then the contractors went into liquidation. It was an absolute nightmare. And everyone thought that project will be abandoned. But I believe, you know, in never ever giving up in life. And against all odds, we strived. We built the hotel, we built the mall, and I wanted to do something different. You got Gateway, that's just a few minutes away from us. You got La Lucia Mall, another shopping center. And the only way we had to do something different, and that's when I introduced the Platinum Walk. I had to bring all these international brands like Gucci, Dolce & Gabbana, Burberry. And people told me, you'll never get them in there because Durban was not known for its big buying power. You know, all these brands were in Johannesburg and Cape Town. And I remember the first time when I flew up to meet the executive from Gucci, and the then head of the organization asked me which was the nearest city to Durban. You know, we started off like that. Durban's not known because when you look at CNN and all this, you'll see Cape Town, you know, and you'll talk about Johannesburg. And so they didn't know about Durban. And I had to convince him that Durban is a place to be. And the time that he chose to fly in was just 1 week after our uprising in Durban. In 2021, we had a mega uprising in Durban. And when he flew in, some buildings were still smoldering. And I realized that this whole uprising we had could really damage the steel. It could actually make them walk away. And I decided I had to tackle it head on. But firstly, you know, we showed them around Durban. We took them to the casino and showed them how people can lose R1 million a time. It was at the Pencil Club, which is one of the finest places in Durban. And I took them out there and I showed them the building that was smoking. And I explained to them, and he said, yeah, they saw it on TV. They're very aware of it because they got stores in South Africa. And they were unfazed. They said, they only look at the markets. As long as we are politically sound, these things happen. They talked about the LA rise, the London rise, in Paris uprising. Yes. And they were something that we were fearful, and they just were focused on the business. And no doubt, you know, the Platinum Walk has become super successful. One of the finest, our Radisson Blue, has become one of the most successful in South Africa. And we're spending more money. We're building the apartments, we're building another hotel and a timeshare unit. And so it is, when it's completely finished, it's going to be South Africa's biggest mixed-use development. And I love property, you know, we love working in that environment. And there's a whole lot of other projects we're doing at the same time. And what is important that during all this time, I had to ensure that the less advantaged were taken care of. And that's when, you know, when I created the Saaya Casino, I also created a trust out of my own shareholdings, and we called it, it was called something else, and we changed the name to Saaya Trust. And, you know, we were the first business in KwaZulu-Natal that donated 250 million rands to the less privileged in this province. And we support 120 organizations, and that gives me the greatest joy, visiting the projects, seeing the people that are housed in these homes, whether it be the homes for the mentally retarded, child welfare, for abuse. We're very involved in centers for abused women and crisis center. We saved Childline. I mean, it was absolutely amazing, the story of Childline. That organization, I read about the fact that they were going to be closed. And I called the manager of the center and the organization. I called them to a meeting, and they told me the problem that we're having with funding. But they also told me that every night they have calls from about 20 to 25 children that want to commit suicide. And they've got to counsel them over the phone and all the lives they send. And they needed a whole new call center, a whole new building. And up to today, we funded. We've spent millions of rands, you know, and we know that it was a great center. It was really sad. One of the big problems in this country is that there's not enough government funding for all these organizations. You know, one of the projects that we got involved in, and though we didn't want to get involved in originally, because was at Lake Haven Homes, where about 7 children perished when a home burned down and the doors were locked and the kids couldn't get out. And you know, there were a whole lot of promises by politicians that we was going to build, and I thought we was going to build. 2 years later, I read an article about this place was still derelict, it wasn't being rebuilt. We went in, we got organized, we rebuilt that home and put in a memorial garden, and we created a great center. And it's projects like that that make me sleep well at night, you know, when I think, because we're very busy, life's very hectic, but I think by reaching out and helping the less fortunate really makes a difference in life. Because I believe that a rich man is poor if you cannot share your wealth with the less fortunate. And that's what life's all about. And, you know, when you have life, and much as we're talking about business, you know, I also have a family, and I have 2 families. And, you know, and I've got 5 children and six grandchildren. We just had a new grandchild a few months ago, and I know you're going to be having a grandchild also. You're going to enjoy grandchildren. Are absolutely amazing. Yeah. They just change your life. And I spend a lot of time. My weekends are reserved for my family, the kids, and we have get-togethers. And one of the amazing things about our relationship is, though I've got 2 families, that we all have a great life. Even Surisha and my ex-wife Mogi, they have a great relationship. And it took a lot of effort in doing that. Because one of the things we must realize that, you know, you cannot, you divorce your wife, you can't divorce your children and your family. You know, there might be disagreements, and always you must look at the fact that if you married someone and you love them, and then things don't work out in life when you go through divorce, you don't have to have a relationship of hatred. You know, there's got to be love, or with the fact that you love someone, there's got to be feelings and togetherness. And that's where we find a major problem in society today, where families disintegrate when there's divorces, when there's separations. And that is so wrong. And so we actually talk about it, and I talk about it so often because I want people to realize that when there's separation of family, it doesn't have to be a devastation, because it causes upheaval in families. And
the children struggle.
Absolutely. Children become the victims of these things. And we've been so fortunate that we've been able to overcome those differences, and we're together as a family. And you know, family is everything in life. You can lose your business, you can lose everything else. Your family will be there. You got to, you know, be with your family. And a lot of people talk to me. In fact, I was on a radio show on Surisha now on Saturday morning, and it was a health show. And they wanted us to talk about our lives. How do we keep healthy? And, you know, it is very important that in life you could have all the money you want, but if you don't have the health, it's worthless. You can be whoever you are. And I've seen it so often in life. People that are very wealthy, got all the money, suffering, spending time in hospital. And that's why it's very important to have a kind of a balanced life, would eat the right food. I mean, we exercise on a regular basis, you know, things like walking. And very important is your mental health. Because lots of people ask me, with all these businesses you run and the thousands of people you employ, how do you keep yourself, less stress-free? And the idea is breathing. If you can control your breathing, no matter what you go through in life, if you just stop doing whatever you want, even during the day at your office, and you breathe in deeply for 4 times, and you exhale it 4 times, and do it for 10 times, and it's amazing. Even in the morning, you start off with deep breaths, because that's what breathing controls your mind. And it's very, very important, the type of, you find a lot of people get involved with disputes and they end up hating people. Now, hatred is a factor that causes hatred is something, people should never have hatred, because hating someone is like having poison and hoping for the next person to die, because it impacts you, it impacts your health. And it is so important to reach out to people, no matter what it is. And that's what Mandela taught us. I mean, he was jailed for 27 years. He still reached out to his jailers. He still reached out. And that's why South Africa, we call it a miracle nation, a rainbow nation, that's got a lot of work to be still done. But he was one example. I was very fortunate, if you look at all these pictures around this boardroom, that I had a very close relationship with Mandela. I traveled around 20 countries with him. We shared some amazing experiences. And having associated with someone like that, he actually teaches you about life. And I remember something that Mandela once told me. He said, you must always remember you've only got one life.
One life.
And you've got to look after it. You've got to look after it like the way you would treasure your gold, your values in life. And no matter how, whether by exercising your mind, your relationships, and that's what we got to do as human beings. But I have a principle in life because I like to do things all the time, find new things, because I get bored. And I want to find new business, new opportunities. And the principle I have in life, it's called CANI. C-A-N-E-I. It means constant and never-ending improvement. It simply means that every day is going to be a better day in life. Like when I lay down in bed in the evenings, I actually think about the day and what I could have done better. And when you do that, a bit by bit, your life improves. And before you know it, your life becomes more successful every day. And that's what we need to do. Because sometimes, so often, no matter what, whether you're a worker, no matter what you're doing in life, you've got to make every day a better day. You've got to think about what you've done wrong, how you could improve. Because if we could, and it also goes down to personal relationships, with everything. You've got to consistently and never-endingly improve your life. Otherwise, you'll be stuck, and you won't move forward. So those are the sort of things that I do that makes me my life very fulfilled, and I'm a very happy person despite all the stresses of business. I think what really keeps me happy is my great family, and then we got 4 pugs at home. We love pets.
Oh,
people
yeah.
don't realize how important pets are. Pets are absolutely great. They help to calm. Sometimes I have a very stressful day. You can play with them. And,
it's enough.
Absolutely,
It's
that's
enough,
it.
yeah.
And so that is the story of my life, I would say. There's just so much to talk about, but I think what I want to finish off the interview, unless you've got more questions to ask, is just to say that, when we look at this country of South Africa, there's a lot of things going wrong, a lot. And if we focus on the negative, we're going to go that way. We got to look at ourselves. We got to rise up, and we got to look after ourselves. We got to do the best. There's a lot of challenges, and there's more good in South Africa. I know we always focus on issues like the crime and what's happening. There's crime all over the world. Some countries have worse crime than us. We just got to be careful. We got to be cautious, and we must stop comparing ourselves to other countries. We'd love to say, oh, it's so much better in Dubai.
Yeah.
It is a fact. There's a lot of countries better, but we are here. We're living here. You just got to make the best of it. You got very hard. And South Africans are amazing. We're very resilient as a nation. We're very forgiving. And it's a country, we come together at great times, despite all the despair. But I've got a lot of confidence in this country. I'm spending right now, we're doing about 4.5 billion rand worth of new projects. We're going to be employing thousands of people, because I believe in this country. I was born in this country, and I believe I owe it to this country to create jobs and employments, to create a better future for all South Africans.
What an incredible story. Mr. Reddy, thank you for sharing it with me with Business Trends with Mumtaz Essa. You are an inspiration. Thank you for all that you do for the community and for inspiring people like myself and all around. Mr. Reddy, I have a question for you. With the elections coming up and you being involved in the electrical sector with Edison Power, how do you see the challenges that we face in South Africa with load shedding? How do you see that affecting the elections?
Let's just talk about the load issue, the load shedding issue. In fact, South Africa should have never had this problem had they prepared earlier on, because it was in 1997 where the recommendation was made to upgrade the power stations, and unfortunately the government at that time decided not to, because remember, our whole South African electrical infrastructure were designed for 4 million of the population, which was the white community. It wasn't broader. South Africans, the new South Africa, I think we never expected this explosion. What you got to remember, that every time a shopping center is built, any building, even when a child is born, you need electricity. There's a requirement for more electricity. And this load shedding is most unfortunate, but it's here to stay for us for a long time. A lot of people are saying it's a short term, it's not. We got about 5 years to go. And it's created devastation to the economy. I mean, we as a group, if you look at our casinos, shopping centers, we spend about 35 million a year just on diesel. It's unbudgeted for, it takes it off the bottom line. And there's billions being spent like that. And that is why we're all going into renewables. You know, we go putting in solar, you know, there's wind farms being built, and the solar is the most popular one because it is something you can use on the rooftop. But what a lot of people don't realize, that during load shedding, your solar system doesn't work unless you have batteries. And why people don't have batteries is because it's very expensive. I mean, if you had to put a solar system in a big shopping center with batteries, it'll cost about 100 million rand. So it's just not viable. So with the results, the shopping centers, we use generators during that time. So South Africa, the Minister of Energy has got a plan, and the renewables can come online. The big problem in South Africa, they're building all the renewable power stations, but the transmission lines cannot take the power. You got to build transmission lines.
So there's another problem.
A major problem. Some of our transmission lines are old. They're ready to collapse. I mean, we build transmission lines. We know what happens. I mean, it's just, we are sitting at a real knife edge in terms of the energy crisis in South Africa. It's going to be for the next 5 years plus. We've got to learn to live with it.
Is that what you foresee, 5 years before it turns around?
5 years before it becomes even, you could have all this. You see, nuclear is very expensive. To build a nuclear plant takes about 20 years. It's too long ago. And we got fossil fuels. Coal is what we got. Coal is cheap. It is the way we should be going, but there's a pressure, because when we borrowed money for our Medupi and Kusile power station from the World Bank, we signed an agreement, or Eskom signed an agreement saying they will not build another coal power station. This was part of the financial agreement. And that's the big problem we're finding ourselves. When the cheapest energy source you can't. I mean, right now, Eskom is paying more for renewable energy that they're buying from the private sector than it can generate power at, which is abnormal. But it is going to be a major problem with the elections. I think this election this year is going to see a bit of a power shift. The ANC is going to be dropping. I think they'll still get the 50% plus, but it leaves them with a very small margin. But the municipalities and but the provinces could be different. I come from KwaZulu-Natal. We've got certain power, new parties that have started, which will impact the balance of power. But what is important, I think at the end of the election, this country will become stronger. Coalitions are not the best of things, but it helps with checks and balances. But whatever happens, we as individuals, we've got to make the country work. We've got to do our best. We've got to get on with our lives. We've got to work very hard. We've got to educate our children. We've got to contribute to the economy. And no matter what happens politically, as long as the country, there's an environment to invest, it's stable, we can continue in our lives. But it's most important that people must realize that we've got to do our best. We've got to improve our lives. Irrespective of what happens in the country, our lives are the most important. And you've got to make sure you do everything to uplift your life.
You're a property tycoon. Keeping with, you're such a positive person, and you believe in South Africa, you believe in the political situation of South Africa, saying that it's going to improve, the power systems are going to improve in 5 years. When it comes to property, what is your message to the foreign investor confidence to invest in South Africa?
I think one of the good things about South Africa, and that's why you find in Cape Town, so many people are buying, property is still comparatively cheap. If you look at the prices you pay in a place like Umhlanga Rocks or Cape Town, those similar buildings cost 20 times more in Europe or even in the US. So we still get good value for money, and we're a great country. We got beautiful climate, there's a great holiday destinations, there's good property escalations. And you look, I mean, maybe we should even compare it to Dubai. Everyone talks about Dubai. Look at the property values in Dubai. I mean, if you had to buy a 1,200 square meter area, which I mean, which is an average size of a property in South Africa, in all these new villa estates being developed, it'll cost you about 20 million to buy that land. And yet here for 20 million, you can have a penthouse, you can have a great villa, you can have a complete building, but that's just the land. And so you've got to look at things. So in terms of a destination, we're great. We got great game parks, we got great weather, we have things a lot of other countries don't have. And sometimes when we look at us as a country, we must remember South Africa as a country has done amazing things. You know, we are one of the few countries in the world to have ever hosted a Rugby World Cup, the cricket, the soccer World Cup. We also the Cricket World Cup twice. There's not too many countries that have done that. And, we're a great sporting nation that despite all the setbacks, we're a third world country. We must remember that. We're not a first world country. And yet we got great stadiums, we got great buildings, our hotels, our game parks are the best in the world.
Our hotels are world class.
Absolutely. Go to the Kruger National Park, go to all these places, I mean, people from around the world. In fact, when I meet with people, and I have entertained a lot of international guests, even business investors, they marvel about our country. They marvel about, our beachfront in Durban is one of the best in the world. We've got a great place. And yet we as South Africa, we don't see the own beauty of our own country. We tend to put down the things, we tend to talk negatively because of our other activities like crime and job opportunities and the issue of empowerment and stuff like that that sees some populations marginalized. Sometimes we got to start looking at things with true perspectives. And the reality, when you look at South Africa overall, it's a great country. We have so much going for us. Great weather. We don't have tornadoes. We don't have massive hurricanes and volcanoes and stuff like that. We're actually quite a nice country. We have very little natural disasters. And we're a beautiful country. We're a country for the future. And I believe in the whole of Africa, if you look at what's happening in the rest of Africa and you look at South Africa, we still absolutely, we're the #1 country in Africa. So I've got a great confidence, and in terms of real estate, it's something that people got to understand that, property is in the right place will create greater value. You'll get the right escalation, you'll get the, you would also get the correct rentals. If you look at places like Cape Town and KwaZulu-Natal, especially Durban and Umhlanga Rocks, you got rental escalation about 8 to 10%. Property values are going up to about 15% per annum. It's just about choosing property in the right place all location. The time. But we're really a great country, and I love this country.
You're proudly South African.
Absolutely.
Mr. Reddy, a final message for my viewers. The same way Neil Armstrong inspired you, final words of wisdom for my audience.
The final words, I would say, and I'm going to quote the words of Neil Armstrong, and said, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. Never ever give up in life, no matter what it is, and always think positively. Leave your problems behind. Don't look behind because you'll go backwards. Go forward, and always remember that if you think negatively, it'll bring you down. Think positively, and always remember things are brighter, and it is you are your architect. You are the architect of your life, and you've got to design your life in such a manner that it is designed for success.
You've inspired me, Mr. Reddy. Thank you very much. What an incredible story. What an incredible human being. If you can If you can,
dream it,
dream it, you
it.
can achieve it. Thank you very much, Mr. Reddy. You are truly, proudly South African.
No, it's great being on your show.
Thank you.